Hey, welcome to Transform Your Workplace. It's Brandon Laws, and I'm here with Nicole Blevins for another episode. Nicole, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So we're remote right now, and many people have been thrust into a remote work environment. Some stayed in a remote work environment. Some are hybrid. Some people went back to the office. But I think in the end, as a distributed workforce, whether it's hybrid or fully remote or whatnot, it can get lonely at times. Have you felt that personally ever?
Yeah, absolutely. I reflect back to when I first started at Xenium, especially, it was in 2019 and I had just started working in the office for a few months, and then the pandemic happened and we were all working remotely, and really have continued to do so, even though we do kind of go into the office here or there ever since. And it was especially hard for me as a new employee that I hadn't built great connections and relationships with coworkers yet. And I was in a completely different state without my family and friends, and that was a really, lonely time. And so I can imagine there are lots of workers out there that felt similar things, and continue to feel that, if they're in this remote work environment.
Yeah, I want to talk about this subject. It's not about us. Like, we can feel lonely at times, but I think for many employers out there, they may have employees that are suffering from isolation and loneliness, and that ends up adding unnecessary stress, probably impacts their job performance. Ultimately, absenteeism could be a problem if they're too isolated and don't have a sense of belonging and community. So I wanted to talk through some strategies that we could offer employers, because we obviously talk to clients about this. We've got huge HR staff who is constantly geeking out on the latest and greatest trends and things like that. But I wanted to start with this. So I think ultimately we need to build a sense of community and belonging inside of our organizations. And I wanted to pull this quote out that I found in this HBR article. It's from the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And it says, "Community is not a place, a building, or an organization, nor is it an exchange of information over the internet. Community is both a feeling and a set of relationships amongst people. People form and maintain communities to meet common needs." End quote. And I love that definition, because if we're striving for community and belonging inside of our organizations, making give a sense of connection, takes work, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does take work to build a community and to build relationships. And, I think there's a lot of organizations that think like, well, by nature of us just being in this organization and having this common mission, like we're a community or like we're a family. And it's really not, you can't just call it that, right? It's not just something you can say, or say because we all work for the same organization that we are connected in some way. You have to work to really build those connections, make meaningful interactions with people, so that builds and grows.
Well, and think about where we've come from too. I mean, you started like at Xenium right before the pandemic, like, a few, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 months before. So you were lucky enough to have met people in person and get exposure to the wider team. Whereas, like, if you think about all these companies who went distributed workforce and even started hiring people, whether it's different states or different countries across the world, they may have been hired in a very isolated environment that may not have reflected the previous culture. So getting those people ramped up and feeling part of the team immediately has got to be the hardest job, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard when people are starting off at remote and they have no baseline, right, or those connections to build. And so it's really hard to have someone come in, and it's a hard job, I think, for HR and business professionals to really focus on that, especially in the onboarding process. Like, onboarding experience is everything. I think there's lots of studies and statistics out there that show that, if someone doesn't have a great onboarding experience or a great experience with the organization in the first 90 days, they're more likely to leave, right? So just really like figuring out what are some ways that we can build that connection and have this really positive onboarding experience so people feel a part of our culture and our community and our organization as a whole.
What do you recommend from an effective onboarding strategy?
Yeah. Every organization is different, right? And so I would first reflect on the organization's culture. Like, what are the things that we value? What are the things that make us unique and different about our people that we can really highlight or showcase in the onboarding experience? And I know, like, at Xenium, one of our, big things is like people first, right? We value our people. It's really important that we like are focusing on the whole person. And so at Xenium, we have kind of a get to know you form that we ask employees to fill out when they start. And then we share that with the whole team so people can get to know that person and find common interests and common ground to be able to reach out to them and say, like, I'm so glad you're part of the team, and get to know them better once we're able to share that. So I think something as little as that can really make a big impact. And I know, like, I always smile when I hear like new people being introduced in that way. Like, oh wow, I would have never known that about them. And I just get to learn so much, and then that builds a great foundation where I feel like I already know them a little bit, to be able to reach out to them and connect with them moving forward.
Yeah, a couple other things that we've done. I mean, obviously we're an HR consulting company, so we HR the heck out of everything, but we've come up with some really good ideas that have stuck, one of which you just described, and then the other is depending on the department that you are onboarded into, we usually would have a cross-functional like meet and greet. So you might meet with leaders and other contributors across the company, and so you get a sense for how things operate, who are kind of the key players in respective departments, and just get a full understanding of the business. The other thing is we started doing a new hire buddy thing. So it's
Yeah, I
somebody
was
who's
gonna say
not the
that.
manager who would meet maybe over the next 90 days, let's say, and they have lunch or coffee virtually or in person if that's possible, just to get to know somebody and have another outlet. So I think those are really fun situations, and I think we do a bunch of other things too, but those are a couple examples that come to mind.
Yeah, I was just going to say the buddy program, and I know that's something pretty new that we started in the last couple of years. And I've had the opportunity to buddy up with some new hires, and it's really a good experience, not only for like the new hire to get connected, but for me too. Like, I get to learn something new about this person, and I also feel like I'm a part of their journey into the organization, able to answer their questions that they might be too afraid to ask their manager or other people because they're still learning and growing. And so it's a really great way to kick off the working relationship with new hires.
For the wider organization, how do we keep a pulse on how people are feeling? Is it appropriate to do a survey, or is it just is it a one-on-one thing with a manager? I feel like we need an awareness check. Like, how are employees feeling, and maybe that will inform what we do from a strategy standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I think managers should be having regular one-on-ones with their employees, right? And that's kind of how managers can get like a gut check or, a feeling based on how those conversations are going, or asking direct questions like, how are you feeling about things? Is there anything I can do to support you? And just really being there as a resource for that person so that they know they're not alone, right? Having those one-on-ones, that regular touch base with your manager helps to make an employee feel like they're not in this alone, that they have that regular touch point with their manager to be able to have conversations about the work or just about things that are going on in their personal life too, that, might be stressors or struggles for them, so that they can see what support that the organization can offer them as well. So I think that is extremely important and often overlooked. Like, I know managers get super busy and there's maybe a tendency to skip one-on-ones or put them on the back burner. And I just highly encourage people to not do that, because it is such a valuable touch point with your employees. And if there's not a ton of like work related stuff that you have to go over, maybe the meeting could be quick, right? And done a little bit sooner, but you still have that ability to just connect with your employees. So I think that is really important. And also employee surveys, like pulse checks is another thing that we do at Xenium. And I think that's another great way to get feedback and data to see like what are the trends. Like, maybe at the beginning of the year, we had some really high scores, but going into the summer or like the winter period here where it's gloomy out in Oregon, right? We see the vibe going down a
Seasonal
little bit,
depression.
right? Yeah, seasonal depression, or maybe there's some of that going on. And it's important for an organization to know that and have that data and think like, what are things that we can do to lift those spirits and to get people connected again, if that's a trend that we're seeing.
Something that I think really impacts the connection piece and probably enhances loneliness is when employers don't do a great job of connecting the work at the contributor level to the overarching mission of the organization. And that's where I think recognition could play a huge role. And granted, we need, like, we did a good job at Xenium of like, here's our core values, here's what we believe in. And we were really specific about what kind of behaviors and what we do from an action standpoint that is getting us to our vision and mission and purpose in the community and with our clients. And we tied our recognition program to those. And I don't know about you, Nicole, I'd love to hear your sense, but I feel like that task or that tactic alone has probably connected us more than ever, because people see how their work is contributing to the overarching like values that we share as an organization. Like, maybe speak on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and recognition alone, right? Being recognized by your peers or by your manager helps you feel more connected just by the nature of what it is, right? You're being recognized for the work that you're doing, and you feel more of a sense of purpose and connection to the organization and the work that you're doing. So it helps with morale overall, but also that recognition piece, when you have it tied specifically to your values or your mission as an organization, like we do at Xenium, where we've got different categories people can choose, it also really helps the employees see and highlights how their specific actions or what they're doing as an individual really contributes to the bigger picture, right? And is really making a difference at the organizational level. And that feels really good too. And, I feel like recognition is also a typically overlooked part of a lot of organizations. And so I think just trying that out and finding ways to recognize people makes a huge difference. And I know sometimes I get busy and I forget,
Same.
but then I'll get one, or I'll see someone on my team, one of my employees get one, and then I like have this like fire inside of me again. I'm like, that is so great. I actually have a few people that I should recognize too, that I need to get out there and do that. So just seeing other people do it really helps it spread like wildfire.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that comes to mind for me is just making sure that we're letting people have the space to be a whole person at work, and making sure that there's space to really get to know one another. So whether it's like activities virtually or in person where you can bring people together and really get to know each other and work across departments or whatever, or even just as simple as like asking the right questions in a one-on-one. I mean, like this thing from the HBR article that really stuck out to me is like, maybe reframe some of the questions that you're asking. Like, instead of asking how are you, maybe there's a better way of asking that. Because you ask a crappy question, you're going to get a crappy answer back, and then lack of connection. So maybe talk about how you look at this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I am a big believer that if you don't ask the question, you will never get the answer, right? If you don't ask not only the question, but the right question and in the right way, then you're not going to get the answer you're looking for. And the question of like, how are you, right? When you ask that question to anyone, what answer do you get? Oh, I'm good. Fine, like, I'm great. And you're not getting really valuable information, right? And so asking a more specific question of like, what are some things that you did this weekend that, filled you up, can really help like start the work week up on a high. If they did some really great things this weekend, you're trying to just get to know each other, build relationships that way. But, asking like, how's work going? How are you feeling about the work? Again, you're going to get a similar answer of like, oh,
Yeah.
good, it's fine, I'm fine, it's been busy, but I'm good. Whereas if you ask, what is one thing that has been really challenging for you this week, right? You're going to get a much more specific, robust answer that you can work with, right? You're like, okay, this has been a challenge. Let's talk about strategies on how I can support you as your manager to overcome that, so that you don't feel like you're alone, right? Back to this loneliness topic, right? You don't feel like you're having to deal with those challenges on your own.
One of the things back in the day we used to do, I don't even know what we call them. They're like leadership groups or I don't think you were part of these at one point, but remember it was like groups of 4. We have a pretty decent sized leadership team. So we broke out into little groups or whatnot, and we check in every month. And one of the questions that we came up with was like, how are you doing at work? Scale of 1 to 10. And then how are you doing personally? Scale of 1 to 10. And then based on the answer you gave, as generic as that question is, the number behind it is where you get to ask a follow-up question like, what's behind that number? Why is personal a 4? if you're willing to share, like it gives you a space to open up. And so I like questions like that where it's like it gives a little information, then you could double click on that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you could also ask, like, what would make it a 10, right? What do you need? What needs to be present? Or what support do you need to get there?
Yep, absolutely. Well, this is good. I mean, anything else that you can think of from, fighting the loneliness bug that often happens, especially here in Oregon in the winter time. It's just, if we're working at home and it's just raining and gloomy outside, it gets kind of lonely and a little bit depressing. So I don't know if you have any like self tactics that you use to fight the loneliness bug.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I moved here from Florida to Oregon, right? And so I don't have a lot of friends or family that's here. And so I try to be really intentional with connecting with people for myself in terms of like, I'll just randomly reach out to like someone in payroll that I haven't talked to in a while and be like, hey, do you want to jump on a quick like 30-minute call and just like catch up and see how each other's doing? Like, I try to intentionally build relationships that way. It has a great impact in terms of me building relationships throughout the organization professionally, but really it's really for my own personal like sanity and trying to connect with people and get to know people better and have people get to know me better so that I feel connected to the whole organization and not just my own department or my own group as well. And so, I would say that, and, just talk to people. I feel like people that are lonely or experiencing loneliness are really good at hiding it in terms of, like they're going to act like everything's fine. If you ask them how they're doing, they're like, I'm great, I'm fine, all good, when that might not be the reality. So just ask, again, those really specific questions and just try to support your people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a two-way street as well. So I think at the employer leadership level, I think there's some things that we can provide, like opportunities or structure or process or philosophy around how we do things that can help fight the loneliness. But I think also giving tools to employees to, like, here's what we recommend that you do, whether it's in perks or benefits that you can offer that might fight loneliness, or just
Yeah,
pure
EAP.
opportunity for them to take action. EAPs is a great example. Like maybe you need some counseling or therapy or something. So just having those opportunities and employees can take action on it, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Good discussion, Nicole. It's been really good to see you, and I thank you for coming back on Transform Your Workplace.
Always.
All right, take care.
See you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.